be showing you my EM2 assignment presentation. So without further ado, this is my claim that Singaporeans sleep an average of 6.9 hours every night. The source for my claim comes from CNA Lifestyle. Singaporeans are now getting more sleep, but not many are satisfied. So this is the actual article from CNA Lifestyle, and this is the exact claim that Singaporeans get an average of 6.9 hours of sleep every night. I don't know about you, cher, but I get like 4. So this is my survey results. I had 30 people participate based off my participant ID. So P1 to P30, and these are their reported sleep hours. This column here is their reported sleep hours. So this is what I'm going to be doing a lot of my calculations. They will almost all be based off of this. And now I'll move on towards task 1, where I will be defining my hypothesis. My null hypothesis here is H0, that population mean sleep duration for Singaporeans is 6.9 hours. My alternative hypothesis, H1, is that population mean sleep duration for Singaporeans is not 6.9 hours. I'll be using a two-tailed test as I'm trying to figure out if it is in the positive or negative direction, in either direction. If there's a significant deviation between my sample mean and the population mean in the positive or the negative direction. So it could be maybe 7.1 hours of average sleep, or it could be 5.9 hours of average sleep, for example. And we also use the alternative hypothesis here as we're making a prediction. Now, why did I use the t-test over the z-test? It is because the population standard deviation sigma is unknown and the sample size is small. Now, let me move on towards task 2, where I will be showing you some formula. This is my first formula for my sample mean, equals average B2 to B31. This just gives me my average, and now I'll be moving on towards my second formula for my sample standard deviation, which is equals sample standard standard deviation dot s B2 to B31. Dot S is important as I'm only trying to find out my sample standard deviation. What this basically means is that what is the standard deviation between the numbers here? Now let's move on towards how I get my sample size. This is a very basic Excel formula once again, equals count B2 to B31. And now let's move on towards task 3. Now, I use a significance level of 5%. This means that we are allowing a 5% risk of rejecting the null hypothesis if it's actually true. Now, my population mean, as given before, is 6.9 hours, and now I'll be showing you how I get my test statistic. This is a very basic formula, equals E2, which is my sample mean, minus E13, which is my population mean, divided by E5, which is my sample standard deviation, divided by square root E11, which is my sample size. Now, let's carry on. Now, how do I get my p-value? This is the formula for my p-value. Equals 2 times t-distribute dot rt absolute E15, which is my t-value, my test statistic, equal comma E11, which is my sample size, minus 1. So this will become 29. Now, let's carry on. Now, let's make a decision based off of a rule for a hypothesis test. Now, why I'm going to be rejecting my null hypothesis as my p-value of 0.0041 is lesser than the significance level of 0.05, aka 5%. Now, what I can say is that there's sufficient evidence to reject the claim that we Singaporeans sleep 6.9 hours. The conclusion is that Singaporeans sleep less than 6.9 hours every night. Now, let's carry on into task 4, where I'll be constructing my 95% confidence interval. Now, the first step for that is to find my margin of error through this formula, equals confidence.t, my significance level E5, which is my sample standard deviation, and E11, which is my sample size. This gives me my margin of error. Now, let me construct my confidence interval. I'll be taking my sample mean, minusing that by my margin of error, which is lesser than u, which is lesser than my sample mean, adding that to my margin of error, which will give me a range of 6.017, which is lesser than u, which is lesser than 6.717. That means that I am 95% confident that the true population lies within this range. Thank you very much.